Data, 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 data. And I'm not talking about the, data from Star Trek. I'm talking about data. We are a service economy. About 80% of the UK's economy is based on services. So what does that actually mean when we talk about that? Well, we're talking about someone who might sell insurance, or you might be a marketing company, or you might be someone who sells some sort of service to someone else. So you might be a company that provides the technical background work for gyms. So now when you go into a gym, you put in your PIN number and it lets you in. There's an entire system around that. And all that is data. When it comes to thinking of trade, the best way to think of this is that if a farmer makes his money by planting foods and then getting that, all that food and then sending it across, that food in that analogy is the data. The data is taken by those companies and it is then transferring back and to across the border. Now, just in 2018, there was a very, very interesting case called Schleiman's 1 and Schleiman's 2. And what this essentially did, if I'm remembering this correctly, is that this put essentially up a digital barrier between the US and Europe. And what is incredibly worrying is that this barrier is then going to be put up between the UK and Europe as well. And because our economy is 80% made up of services who rely on the transferring and keeping and storing of data, it's pretty damn important that this is something that we get right. And obviously, my channel, we bring up things where things just aren't going right or aren't even being talked about before. And as I've brought up this situation many, many times before, no one is talking about the data. No one. And this could be such a huge blow to our economy if this isn't handled right. So before we jump into our article today, please do remember to hit that like, share and subscribe button. And also down below there is a link to my Patreon page, as well as a one-off donation link called Buy Me Coffee, where you can, buy me a coffee. And thank you to all those people who do support me that way. It's very, very much appreciated. And of course, thank you to everyone else who does support the channel in various different ways, even if you just click that like button. So, on with today's article. This comes from the Yorkshire Bylines, and the title is To Share or Not to Share Data, the UK in the Dock. So, receiving nil points in Eurovision shows how isolated the UK has become. It fails every time, whether it's ramming passengers from all over the world together for hours on end at Heathrow, or shifting dodgy questions on the feeble Anglo-Australian trade deal, or privatising the NHS, or the PPE scandal, or the Northern Ireland Protocol. It brings home the nil points mark out of 10 for trust to, again, being a complete zero. Last week, while the eyes of the world on the row were on over the row of the UK refusing to stick to the rules on Northern Ireland Protocol, members of the European Parliament decided that the UK's proposed rules on protecting EU citizens' personal data weren't good enough. Until Brexit, the UK followed the same rules as the rest of the EU. Now it wants to define and secure a competitive advantage, or so it actually thinks. Data on goods and services is transferred across borders all the time, in line with regulations on how to do so and on whom you actually share the information with, and on whom you actually sell it to. The EU has the strictest rules for protecting personal data and privacy, known as the General Data Protection Regulations, or GDPR. To stop such data from being looked at, or to try and prevent that data from being sold to companies, advertisers and governments, under Article 27 of the GDPR data controllers or processors outside the EU who process EU citizens' personal data must determine in writing a representative in the EU Subject to limited exemptions, this means that anyone, including us, handling private information for an EU citizen has to apply to the new EU rules, and they risk big fines if they actually don't. The EU prevents personal data transfers to any country outside the EU whose privacy safeguards are weaker than its own. The USA is one such country, and the UK is likely to share lots of it. So both are completely fails in the EU's tests. But both try to get around the stringent EU rules in the hopes of persuading organisations outside the EU to locate themselves to the UK or the USA. This shows just how much they actually missed the point. Even if a company's HQ was on the moon, it would still have to comply with EU law if it handled any data about an EU citizen, such as a person's recent online purchases. And last week, MEPs wanted assurance from the Commission that the UK could actually be trusted to handle the personal information of EU citizens, and there were trading entities that were adequately in place as well. And they quite frankly weren't satisfied. MEPs were quickly to lambast the European Commission's proposals on the transfer of personal information from outside the EU to countries, especially to the UK and the USA. The Commission's proposals were criticised as lacking sufficient safeguards in the so-called adequacy agreements with the two countries. The adequacy agreement is meant to guarantee that EU citizen personal data is protected to the exact same extent outside the EU as it is within, where it is covered by GDPR. After considerable debate, MEPs decided that unless the situation can be improved, they would not approve adequacy agreements. This means that our government or any company in the UK may no longer automatically assume that it can store or send EU customers' personal data to the USA or anywhere else outside the EU, as many social media, travel, health, COVID, game, and insurance and shopping sites already do, if that data is not adequately protected from the onward use of surveillance activities. The Home Secretary needs to pay attention, and the UK service providers and exporters would be advised to keep following EU rules. They must also guarantee that EU citizens' data will not be traded and probed out by outside agencies. And this is not a sign of trade agreements that entail EU data being moved without adequate safeguards or installation. Our main trading partner is the EU, and no one there has any incentive to be associated with a UK operator flouting the rules. They face very hefty fines if they breach any of those data protection rules. Facebook came unstuck with the EU when it ruled against them in the way that it transfers data about EU Facebook users to the USA, using what is known as the Standard Contractual Clause, or SCS. Under the SCS, no organisation may send such data outside the EU unless adequate data protection is in place in the country to which it is being sent, such as the USA. The EU was completely unimpressed by Facebook's claim that running this would potentially lead to 410 million EU users not being able to use its service. The answer is for Facebook and anyone else to improve how it actually safeguards personal data. If data protection in other countries, including the UK, is not up to scratch, then they can be assured that the MEPs will be on their case. They insist that the EU citizens' protect rights and rights to personal privacy are protected, otherwise big companies will be able to freely do what they like with their personal data. This is one of the more pressing issues to citizens everywhere. Social media giants, together with banks, have already suggested that rather than governments should manage citizens' online identities, such as identity cards and bank cards, and can be trusted providers to verify that a citizen is who they say they are. What these organisations might do to commercialise that data is open to government surveillance is unclear. MEPs, however, want to minimise the risk of personal privacy. The row also highlights the chasm between the EU and the US on protecting of personalised data. Whereas the USA allows personalised data to be used extensively by businesses and government agencies for all kinds of purposes, including surveillance, the EU does not, nor did the UK when it was in the EU. But we can't rely on that anymore for further protection. What we had in the EU. But the EU can insist that we comply with the EU rules to safeguard EU citizens and prioritise personal privacy over surveillance. So the UK must now actually prove that privacy protection is now adequate. And that could be done by simply carrying on with the GDPR. But the government insists that it will not align its policies and rules with that of the EU, even though it co-created them just a few years ago. The UK, postured as a sovereign independent state, has left the EU completely unimpressed. But there is a high risk of even more unnecessary rows with the EU in a highly charged area of trade, migration and policing, which rely on data sharing and cooperation. It is unclear what has actually changed to make the UK reluctant to retain privacy protections we used inside the EU. The government may think that it will get a competitive edge by lowering its standards. However, if it does not protect data adequately, its global ambitions will come to nothing. If it is in danger of failing us again, and this is one issue that will not go away. And I completely agree. As I said at the beginning of all this, data is so important to us. We are a service-driven economy. 80% of our economy is based on that. And the trade good, where a farmer makes food, our service makes data, and data is the key, and that constantly flows. And if we are not seen to be protecting our those rights, then pretty much 80% of our economy can then not interact with our biggest and closest trading partner. And that ain't going to be able to move elsewhere around the world. That is not going to be able to simply just start selling insurance to like Brazil or America or Canada or Australia. That's not going to happen. It's not going to be that easy. And that will have a massive impact on our economy. It boggles the mind, the implications this could actually have. But as I keep on warning about it, and I keep on telling people, you've got to seriously start to worry about data. Because this may seem nothing at the moment, but as we've said, as the UK intends not to align itself with the EU, then what does that actually mean? It intends, as I said, they intend to get a competitive edge, but doing what? How are you going to do it? What does this mean? Do you realise the consequences this means to 80% of our economy if you do that? Of course they don't, because Brexit is being run by complete ideologues at the moment who are free market fundamentalists, and they want absolutely no regulation at all. Again, this was the driving force of the Brexiteers and the driving split that drove the Conservatives to be either very pro-European or very anti-Eurosceptic Brexiteer type people. So, there you go. I'm sure this will not be the last time we see data being brought up. And in fact, I suspect this will cause huge problems down the line. Like I say, 80% of our economy relies on that data. So, as always, thank you for watching. Please remember to hit that like, share and subscribe button on your way out. And of course, there is a link to my Patreon page down below and a link to a one-off donation page called Buy Me a Coffee, where you can, buy me a coffee. And as always, thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you all next time.